Hey everyone, welcome to Navigate. I'm your host, Tim Austin, and Navigate is the place where we combine insights, strategies, and a good dose of encouragement to help our listeners navigate change with greater confidence and clarity. And today we're going to talk about how to manage turmoil in transition seasons. Transitions are naturally times and seasons of turmoil. They can feel like storms passing over our lives, and when they catch us off guard and bring so much disruption, life as we once knew it ceases and turmoil persists. But the real tragedy in transition is when we rush through it without giving ourselves the gift of time and the space to processing not just the external change, but the internal shift happening in our hearts and in our souls. And sure, this approach takes patience and intentionality, but it's worth it in the end. My story is one of intentionally slowing down, but it didn't come right away during a very big transition in my life. After 20 years overseas, back in the U.S. with a lot of questions, with a lot of uncertainty, I was speaking to a counselor friend of mine, and we were having a conversation about my transition and how I just wanted, and I think I was communicating to him just how I wanted to get through it and get to the other side. And I was tired of all the questions and uncertainty. And he asked me a question. He said, "Tim, have you taken time to breathe?" And that stopped me in my tracks because I had not taken time to breathe. I had not taken sufficient time to really step back and pause and to process the transition and regain a sense of perspective and clarity, even in the uncertainty. So in this episode, we're going to discuss some strategies for managing this terrain so that you can come out on the other side stronger and more resilient through transition. First strategy is to avoid those big leaps if possible. Like I said, my story is one of wanting to jump to the other side, to leap there, to get there as fast as possible. But when we try to rush through a transition, we're more likely to make mistakes and end up feeling even more stressed and overwhelmed. The path of hurried steps, void of reflection, can be a really slippery slope. Transition is usually a series of steps requiring some degree of wisdom and discernment along the way. So sitting with the questions prayerfully is like getting through that briar patch unscathed because we've been intentional, one step at a time. So instead, we're taking things at one step at a time and allowing ourselves to gather our thoughts, appreciate the view and the perspective, and gain much needed clarity along the way. So this may mean slowing down our pace, taking some time off, or maybe asking for some help from others. Like I said, I met with a counselor friend, I had mentors, and I eventually hired a life coach to help me navigate that transition and pause and step back and kind of fight that temptation of wanting to leap to the other side. Strategy number 2 is remember and reconstruct. Change often shatters our lives into fragments, and we can feel like our life is just kind of laying there in bits and pieces. Navigating life in fragments isn't easy, and we long to feel whole and we long to feel integral again. Remembering well gives us the opportunity to put the pieces back together into a new kind of wholeness designed for this new season that's ahead of us. I remember picking up a book called The Rest of God by Mark Buchanan, and this was a number of years ago, and since then it has become my go-to book, particularly for Sabbath seasons. But in it, he makes a statement that identity is rooted in memory. And transitions can also mess with our identity. We can feel a loss of purpose. We begin to question, who am I in all of this? A lot of our roles and responsibilities that we had in the past have been stripped away, and we're kind of starting from scratch. But remembering well helps us to gain a sense of identity. And that is something you see in Scripture. It's something that you see God, the story of the Israelites. They kept being challenged to remember what God had done for them. It roots us back into a sense of purpose and identity, who we really are at the core. So I like to call this process remembering and reconstructing. By prayerfully rummaging through the storehouses of our memory, we invite wisdom and discernment, and we also cultivate gratitude. When we're going through a transition, it's easy to focus on the negative aspects of the change. But usually, more often than not, if we stop to pause long enough and to reflect, there's much to be grateful for. Get with those trusted people that you can tell your story to. Author Bruce Feiler puts it beautifully when he says this: "When in turmoil, turn to narrative. The proper response to a setback is story. Reimagining and reconstructing our personal stories is vital to living a fulfilling life." I love that. So this whole process will help you to reconstruct your life in a way that is meaningful and fulfilling. So remember and reconstruct. Finally, and closely related, is don't miss the moments. Transitions can be full of ups and downs, but it's important to savor the good moments along the way. What are those smaller transitional moments within the larger transition? Don't allow the macro transition to sabotage the meaning, significance, and beauty of those micro transitions, those pauses along the way, those moments to be grateful for with family and friends, just various ways that we can stop and be grateful for those small transitions in our lives. So take some time each day to appreciate the small things, such as a beautiful sunset, a kind gesture from a friend, or a moment of peace and quiet. John Eldredge says in his book, Get Your Life Back, he says, "I believe that God is often providing the opportunity for transition, but since we don't have eyes to see it, we may have been missing it." So true. John Eldredge reminds us that God often provides opportunities for transition, but we may not have eyes to see them. We may not be looking in the right place. We may be distracted by the macro, big picture, where we may need to be focusing on some of the smaller moments in our lives. So be kind to yourself. Make room for those little transitions throughout the day. I hope these strategies help you to manage the turmoil of transition seasons just a little better. Remember, it's normal to feel stressed and overwhelmed during a time of change, but by taking things one step at a time, remembering the positive, and savoring the moments, you can come out on the other side stronger and more resilient. Before we wrap up, remember that life isn't just about efficiency, it's about savoring the moments. If you're interested in learning more about how to manage transitions, join me for one of my free Tools for Transitions webinars, or join me on my group coaching journey cohort called 3D Transitions, and learn how you can, in a group setting, learn to discern, discover, and design a winning transition. And you can always book a discovery call with me at EncompassLifeCoaching.com to have a conversation about your specific situation and to learn more about my coaching offers. Thank you for joining us today as we explore the art of managing turmoil in transitions. I've been your host, Tim Austin, and I'll catch you next time.